right, once again, let's go ahead and get started with our webcam and with our webinar here. Hopefully this won't be the only time that we get to do a webinar. The webinar is entitled How to Make a Workshop Work, Powerful Tools to Help Teachers Collaborate and Learn. I am Dr. Shane Dixon, and I am excited to be with you here today. So before we get started, just a few house cleaning items. You'll notice, for some of you that have never been a part of a webcast and a webinar, you'll notice that you'll have a toolbar here where we can communicate with each other. I've asked a question in the chat box, and if some of you want to look at that chat box and pay attention to it there, then we can go ahead and talk to each other that way. Obviously, I can't listen to 100 people talk at once, so if you would go ahead and if you have a question or if you have a reply to one of my questions, feel free to go ahead and use that chat box to note any questions, and I'll try to pay attention to it as much as I can. All right? So if anybody would like to send a little chat or discuss with me, that would be great. All right. Now let's go ahead and get started. Now, the Ministry of Education in Peru and I have been discussing different ways to maybe help do some training in Peru. And so one of the exciting things that we've decided to try to do is help you figure out how to do workshops. Now, many of you have already been doing workshops, and I have been talking with a number of you about the kind of workshops you're doing, and that's wonderful. But we wanted to give just kind of a general overall training for some of you that might be new to giving a workshop. And for those of you that are veterans, maybe we can give you some information that will help you as you continue to develop and hone your skill as a workshopper and as a teacher trainer. All right. Well, once again, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I wanted to make sure that everybody can hear me. Is that true? I just want to kind of see if things are working well. I see that we have 55 people already attending, and that's great. I will be recording this video, so if you're having any trouble at all, feel free to watch the recorded video, and we can you can enjoy the webcast or the webinar that way. All right. Let's go ahead and get started with my primary question. In fact, I'll be asking 3 questions today, 3 important questions about giving a workshop. So let's go ahead and start with this first question. In fact, I'll start a little bit earlier first. What's a workshop? If we were to discuss this idea of a workshop, what would you say a workshop is? In a general sense, not a teacher training workshop. When I say the word workshop, si hablamos en español y decimos un taller, ¿qué significa un taller? ¿Qué es? What is a workshop? Well, for some of you, I think you can understand that the idea of a workshop is a place where people will go and build things. Is that true? You go inside a workshop and you might see somebody hammering, right? Or drilling something. Maybe it's a car or an automobile workshop. Maybe it's some sort of furniture workshop, or maybe it's Santa's elves and their toys that are being made in Santa's workshop, right? A workshop is a place where you build things. Okay, now why is that important? Well, let's discuss really quickly. If a workshop is a place where you build things, then my first big question is this. What do you make in a teacher training workshop? That's my first question. Okay. All right, what do you make, what do you build in a teacher or a teacher training workshop? All right, I'm going to ask everyone if you can participate in the chat. Feel free to go ahead and send me a link, send me some ideas to the question, what are we making in our teacher or teacher training workshops? Let me see if I can see any answers to that question right now. Maybe I'll send you guys that question as well. What are we making in a teacher workshop? All right, that's my question. Okay. I can see that some of you are saying, well, we're making teachers, and that makes sense, right? You are a teacher trainer, and your job is to make a teacher. That's true. Anything else? Yes, we're making lessons. A teacher makes lessons, and in a teacher training workshop, you might be building away, honing your craft, and what is your craft? Creating exciting, dynamic lessons. That's true too. Okay. All right. Anything else? Yeah, some of you have suggested that you can make community. I think community makes a good amount of sense. A teacher training workshop is an opportunity for teachers to get together and share ideas, collaborate, work together. Create friendship even, or consensus, where we can all agree that this is the correct way or a good way for us to change or modify or amend or make our school more powerful. And consensus is a powerful thing. When you have consensus, when every teacher buys into the same concepts, to the same ideas, to the same lesson plans, then what you have is a school that's moving forward in the same direction. Right? Instead of people being separated, we all have a shared vision. And vision is a powerful thing. Okay? Oh, another idea. In a teacher training workshop, perhaps what we are creating is energy. Now, when we say energy, I've been to a lot of different teacher training workshops, and energy sometimes is lacking. Now, I find that really disturbing because if you're a teacher trainer, you have to be one of the best, most energetic, most in line with what an example of a teacher is. So if you're going to do a teacher training workshop, please, please make sure you have energy. Now, why energy? Because energy is contagious, and teaching doesn't happen unless there's a shared amount of energy, right? So you're trying to create a lot of energy in the room and a lot of excitement for the tools that you want to share. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to our second question. And this question, let me see if I can grab it here. It's right here. What makes a workshop different from a classroom lesson? What makes a workshop different from a classroom lesson? That's our second question here today. Let's go ahead and think about that. A workshop different from a lesson. And I'm talking about a classroom lesson here, of course. Now, some of you have been teaching classroom lessons for a long time. And a workshop with teachers may seem a little bit scary. It's a little bit different. How is it different? Okay, so let me type this in. What makes a workshop different from a classroom lesson? That's the question. All right, that's the question that I'm posing to all of you today. Okay, so let me see if I'm getting any answers here. All right, I'm just going to wait just a little bit longer, see what I can see. All right. Okay. There are some differences, aren't there? There are some key differences. So when you're giving a workshop, you're going to want to keep these differences in mind. All right. Some of you are saying some of the same things that I'm going to talk about today. All right. One of the first things that we're going to talk about is this word right here. Tools. All right. Let me put it right over here above my shoulder. All right. Tools. So when we talk about tools, think about that metaphor of a workshop again. All right. A workshop is a place where we use tools in order to create things. A teacher training workshop is an opportunity for you to actually help people use those tools. and use them in perhaps ways they've never seen or used before. In other words, and let's talk about this, a teacher training workshop should do one of two things. One, you're introducing tools that teachers currently do not use or have never seen or understood before, right? For example, you're going to teach them how to use flip cams. We've never used flip cams before in our life. We do not know how to use flip cams. Okay, that's one kind of teacher training, right? The workshop is going to be based on a new tool. Or two, what you can also do is introduce a tool that they already have in new and innovative ways. All right? So in this case, what your job is not so much introducing something new to them, but showing new ways and new strategies. Brush out that tool that you've never really cared that much about. Let me show it to you in new and exciting ways. So the opportunity for you there is to say, oh, well, you've never used Google Drive? Oh, yeah, I use Google Drive, where here's 5 exciting ways to use it with your students. With my students, I've never used Google Drive with my students. Oh, that's interesting. Pair and group work? Oh, yeah, I always do pair and group work. Oh, really? Well, let me share 5 new ways to do pair and group work that will help you to flip the classroom. Oh, wow, that's an exciting new way to do something that maybe has been sitting there in their toolbox for a long time, and you just need to brush it off and show them new ways to do it. Okay? All right. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to giving a workshop, the idea of tools. It's one of the big differences. All right. Here's another difference, and I think most of you have been sharing this with me. All right. Another key difference, you're not teaching students anymore, are you? In a teacher training workshop, you are actually going to teach teachers, right? You know that. But what does that mean? Well, it's a whole level higher, isn't it? It can create stress for some of you. You're with your peers. And because you're with your peers, you're being observed rather closely. Teachers also have unusual traits. How can I say this? As a teacher trainer myself, training teachers all over the world, I can tell you that teachers often feel that they already know how to teach. I have my tools, I have my toolbox, I already know what I'm doing, and I'm going to this required workshop. I don't really want to be here. So you already have teachers that know, and that creates another problem. You're trying to help teachers who may feel that they don't need help. So your ability to convey clear and concise information and help to turn the tide and help them see that maybe you have ideas that could help them is key. And that leads me to my last idea. Here we go. Time. Let's put that right there. So, teachers may not want to listen to you. That's hard. And teachers may already feel that they know some of the material that you're sharing with them. Or, if it's a new tool, they don't need it. It's complicated. It's not going to help them in any way. These are some of the mental blocks that come with teacher training in general. Now, one of the easiest ways to overcome this is to help suggest to teachers that you're going to help them with time. You're going to save time. You're going to make it more efficient. You're going to make their lives better. So a teacher training workshop that helps to focus on the idea of, I will make your life easier. I'm going to give you tools and advice that will make the classroom experience a more enjoyable, better, and ultimately, this won't be a waste of your time. So remember, teachers are very aware of time, they're very aware of efficiency, and your job is to help them become more efficient, help them to improve their classroom practice, and if you're able to convince that that's what you're going to do, you can win them over. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Okay? In fact, we're going to talk about it with our third question right here. Here it is. What is similar, about a workshop and a classroom lesson? What is similar about a workshop and a classroom lesson? Okay, that's my third question. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys some time to answer it. What is similar, not different, about a workshop and a classroom lesson? Okay. Great. Okay. All right. So we've talked about some of the differences, right? We've talked about how you're obviously teaching teachers. In a workshop, you're obviously focusing on tools. And as a word of advice, I want you to think in terms of time. Now let's talk about some of the similarities. You know, as teachers, that, well, there are some ways in which a workshop is similar to a classroom lesson. I don't want you to forget all the wonderful and amazing things that you have to offer when you're giving a workshop. There's a lot of similarities, right? You're still in front of people, you're still giving energy, and you know what? English as a second language teachers have kind of amazing gifts. They have a way of presenting and sharing that's very clear, and often because you're teaching another language, what you do is you try to take a lot of difficult concepts and you try to make it easier to understand. That is an amazing, amazing gift. And in fact, it's one of the most important things that you can do when it comes to a workshop as well. Now, in the English as a second language world, we often refer to this as scaffolding. Scaffold means to create a system or a process and break things down. In cognitive science or in neuroscience, we often call this chunking. Let's see if I can put that right there. All right, and chunking refers to this idea of taking a process and, again, breaking it into pieces so that it can be more easily consumed by the learner. Now, chunking is an ESL principle, English as a second language principle, but it also works really well in teacher training. For example, when you're giving training, make sure you keep it simple and clear and break it down. For example, you'll notice today what I did is I gave you 3 very clear and very simple questions. What am I doing? I'm chunking, I'm scaffolding, right? I'm doing things in series of 3s. You'll notice here, whoop, over here, tools, teachers, time. Oh, I even made it rhyme. Yeah, it's part of chunking. I'm dividing things into pieces to make it more easily consumed for the learner. That's an important principle for teachers. It's also an important principle for teacher training. Okay, so here are 3 ways to make a hot dog, or 3 steps in the process of making a hot dog. Yeah, that's chunking. Here are 5 ways to use cameras in the classroom. Here are 4 techniques to convert your classroom to a flipped classroom. Make sense? You're breaking things down. In cognitive science and in neuroscience, they often talk about the rule of 3. In other words, having 3 things. And why? Because 3 is about the maximum number people like to remember. It's encouraging to have things in 3s. Now, sometimes I might do 4 or 5 or just two things. I'm not saying it has to be 3, But if you can just kind of get yourself in that habit of breaking things down and remember that rule of 3, I think it will help a lot. Okay? All right. Let's talk about one more thing right here. Collaboration. So, you want teachers on your side, right? And teachers sometimes resist teacher training. It's true. So what can you do so that teachers aren't resisting your training? Well, one of the most powerful things you can do is shut up and listen. Collaboration is a very powerful tool. And one of the things that you can do in order to collaborate is, 1, make things conversational. You'll notice I decided not to do a PowerPoint presentation here. I wanted you to see me face to face. I even brought pieces of paper. I went low tech instead of high tech. Why did I do that? Well, one of the reasons is people learn better face to face, eye to eye, and when they're in a collaborative mode or mood of learning. So what are we doing right here? Hopefully we're having a conversation. I'm asking you questions. I'm trying to receive the feedback as much as I can. And we are constantly in this mode of having a conversation. Listening and writing down and getting those smart people in your class who are sometimes the most resistant. If you can get those smart people in your class or in your workshop to participate, to listen, to share ideas with you, then it's very likely that they will be your supporters and your advocates rather than your enemies. Collaborating and having somebody who's smarter than you in that classroom can be a very powerful tool. So a workshop is not just me talking to you. A workshop is an opportunity for people to collaborate. And remember that workshop metaphor. You're teaching a new tool, and what do you want them to do? You want them using that tool. You want them practicing that tool. You want them to be hammering away, making and creating things with the tools that you have presented to them. Okay, so remember that collaboration is a very powerful, powerful tool in a workshop. Okay, now let's talk about one last thing. And for me, it is perhaps the most important when it comes to a proper workshop. Now, the word is coordination. Let me put it right here. When I talk about coordination, I'm talking about us as teacher trainers making sure that the message that we have given actually gets out there into the real world. In other words, I want to convert theory into practice. Theory into practice. And getting people to actually do the things that you have asked them to do or invited them to do can be a tricky thing. Now, how do you follow up, I think would be another word for coordination. How do you follow up with teachers in a workshop or after a workshop? Okay? All right, let's think about this. How do you follow up? Well, one of the things you can do that's very clear is in a workshop, you're helping people set goals. Okay? Setting goals is a very primary way of doing what we call conceptualization in cognitive science. Conceptualization means I can imagine myself doing this. Or where do I imagine myself doing this? So if you're trying to teach a child to dive off a diving board, they first need to imagine themselves being successful at it. If you're trying to teach teachers a new tool that you want them to use, or a tool used in a new way, they're going to need to imagine themselves in the classroom performing and doing it. Okay, so one of the things you need to do in a workshop is get teachers to conceptualize, and that can be done at the very least in a reflective activity at the end of the workshop where they're writing things down, they're setting some goals, and they're sharing how they're going to do this. And of course, I love for teachers to share that. So in a workshop, make sure you invite people at the end of that workshop. How are you going to use this? When are you going to use this? And they can share those ideas, and maybe some teacher sitting in the back going, this workshop is not for me. You can have them listen and go, oh, wow, that is a good idea. You know, I want to do that too. That collaborative power, once again, going back to number 2, becomes a key element for your ability to follow up and coordinate with the teachers. By coordination, I also mean one more thing, and that's at the end of the workshop, you need to coordinate, figure out ways in which to follow up with teachers to find out what they did. Now, how can this be done? Well, there's a lot of different ways, and I think you can think about some of them right now. Coordination might just be something that you do in a follow-up 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year after, right? And coordination could be done in a number of ways. For example, you could email people and just ask them, did you do it? Did you not do it? Another thing you could do is create a survey. A survey is a particular instrument so that you can really gather the information that you need to find out how people are using the tools that you have given them. And you've noticed that I have sent several tools to some of the groups in Peru so that I can find out, what are you doing? What are your action plans? How are you doing them? How are you implementing them? And I'm trying to gather as much information I can because I'm trying to measure impact. So one of the other things that you can do, of course, besides email, survey, one of the things that I love to do that I wish I could do in Peru is interview. Go to the schools, interview your teachers, find out what they're doing. You can also observe, actually witness some of the tools and some of the ideas live in the classrooms that you're able to visit. Can you do this? Well, unfortunately, coordination, follow-up, these kinds of things can be very difficult and time-consuming, but there are ways. And what I'm trying to suggest is, for a workshop to work, coordination is key. Does that make sense? For a workshop to work, coordination is key. All right, so let's go ahead and talk just a little bit more. Excuse me. And I wanted to end with just a few more tips that I wanted to give to all of you today. I think we'll probably be finished in about 10 minutes for those of you that just want to know the time. So we've been talking about a workshop. We've been talking about, well, 3 key questions to ask yourself when designing or creating a workshop. Can you remember what they are? All right, let's review. So the first question was, what are you making? What do you make in a teacher training workshop? What are you creating? Well, teachers, friendship, energy, lessons. You're improving the teacher craft. That's your job. Good. The second question was, how is teacher training maybe different from a workshop? And we talked, or from a lesson plan, excuse me. And so we talked about, well, in a workshop, you're trying to focus on tools. And teachers are different from students. And time is always a consideration to think about. Teachers care about saving time, making their craft better. You don't want to waste their time. As soon as they believe that you are wasting their time, guess what teachers do? They shut you out. True? You've seen it. You've done it. All right. And then our last question, the third question, was how is a teacher training workshop the same as a classroom lesson? And here we talked about not throwing away all of your tools, all of those amazing things that you naturally do as a teacher. You want to use them in your workshop. So we talked about the ability to do chunking, scaffolding things so that they are broken out. We've talked about collaboration, right? Your ability to get teachers to work in pairs and in teams. It's a workshop after all, which means they need to work. And then finally, we talked about coordination. Coordination meaning, well, you need to find out, you need to follow up to find out if your training is working. You need to get that feedback of what's working well, what's not working well, so that you can also improve your teacher training craft. Okay, so to end, I just wanted to give some, we've given you a few do's. These are the things I want you to do. Now I'm going to share a few don'ts. Okay, when I say don't, I'm obviously referring to things that maybe people do that they shouldn't do in a teacher training workshop. And you probably have seen some of these before. All right. Number 1, don't compete with PowerPoint. Now, I love PowerPoint. In fact, I designed a PowerPoint for this workshop. So what do I mean when I say don't compete with PowerPoint? PowerPoint sometimes has the ability to be in front of you, right? The slides are right there. And it has a way of drowning out the teacher's voice, passion, energy, and connection to the audience. So, PowerPoint also has a way of numbing people to the information that's given. Well, if you were going to give me a PowerPoint, why don't you just send that to me and I no longer need to pay attention to you? Okay, so this is not a knock necessarily on PowerPoint. I just want you to realize that PowerPoint oh, excuse me, I'm just paying attention to this really quick. We've reached over 100 people. Welcome. So because that has happened, I just received a notice, and so I'm just trying to make sure that we can properly, I'm just clicking on buttons so I can see you again. Okay. So again, I don't mind PowerPoint, but I do mind when a teacher goes behind it. For those of you that have seen me speak in person, sometimes I did bring a PowerPoint presentation or I showed a projector screen, and sometimes I jump right in front of it. I walk back and forth in front of that stage, and the reason I'm doing that is there is no way I'm going to let PowerPoint control my presentation. My words and my ideas matter too much for me to let a PowerPoint presentation tell me 1, 2, 3. Oh, sure, I want you to talk in 1, 2, 3. I've done it all over this presentation. But be very careful to let PowerPoint be more powerful than you. Okay, so number 2, don't compete with professors. This can be very difficult. Often there are other teachers or people in the audience in a teacher training group that are suspicious. I see it all the time. There are people there kind of sitting back, looking at you going, I don't think they know. I don't think they know all the research. I don't think they know everything that I know, and they will be skeptical of your training. Now, one of the things that I see with new teacher trainers is instead of trying to get those skeptical teachers on your side, what you do is you try to oppose them. You try to push them. And that can, what that can do is it can create a situation of antagonism within the teacher training. So my advice here is to try to get professors on your side. Have activities. Have time for others. Embrace the smart people in the room. And when you see someone who's antagonistic, don't assume that they're dumb. It could be that they're quite bright. Invite them, listen to them, give them the floor. And if you need to, change the discussion, shift it to accept and allow that person to share the opinions that maybe could influence your own pedagogical ideas. So you don't have to compete. There's plenty of smart people that can influence you and can influence the audience, okay? So be careful with that. Now, the last piece of advice that I have is this one. Don't compete with PowerPoint, don't compete with professors, and the last one, don't compete with yourself. Now, what do I mean by that? All right, well, when you are teacher training and you see all of these teachers, it can be a little bit overwhelming. You might feel a little bit nervous. You might feel judged, and you are being judged. You might feel that there's a critical eye on you, and you might even doubt what you're doing or why you are there. Take heart. We've all been there as teacher trainers. One of the primary things that you can do if you're feeling a little self-conscious and you're feeling like you're the center of attention in a way that you don't like, maybe they know something that you don't know. My word of advice here is to stop worrying about looking good or feeling good, because it's not about you at all. The best teacher trainers don't care how they look or how they feel. They are more interested in not looking good, not feeling good. They're interested in being good and doing good. In other words, your focus should be on the teachers. Make them strong, make them better, make their tools sharper, right? More easily used. If you focus on the teachers instead of yourself, training will always go better. Okay, so don't compete with PowerPoint, don't compete with professors, and please don't compete with yourself. Focus on those teachers and forget yourself. Don't worry about yourself. It's not about you. It's about helping teachers become better teachers, becoming who they can and should be. All right, well, we've shared this small teacher training workshop, how to make a workshop work, powerful tools to help teachers collaborate, and I hope you've enjoyed it. It has truly been a pleasure to be here with you today. Please feel free to send me more chat questions, more ideas, and hopefully we can see each other again very soon. I'll see you later. Bye.